Do any of you have any questions? Okay. Who would like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Saunders?
Council, I'm David Saunders, 601 South Main Street, on behalf of the applicant. First of all, I'd like to compliment staff on their terrific analysis. They, in each one of the staff reports, go into great detail as to why this is an appropriate project at an appropriate location. And that's really the theme of my presentation this evening. It's a well-designed project in an appropriate location. Your Planning Commission unanimously approved all three of these projects. And I'd just like to highlight a few things. First of all, this is not a situation in which a developer is somehow imposing high-density apartment projects on a pre-existing single-family area. This is an area already of mixed use, and on 3 of the 4 sides of this project, you have existing apartments. And so since the 80s, this has been a transition zone, and this area has, from time to time, had higher density uses, and they've been quite compatible with the area. If this area has been vacant since the 50s, logic tells us that if it was appropriate for single-family development, a developer would come in and build that project. It doesn't work for single-family, and therefore it makes sense to have this type of high-end, well-designed project. The beauty of this, I think, is really the senior nature. We have tremendous need for senior housing. This is an appropriate location for senior housing. The senior housing impacts, whether it's traffic or noise or other types of impacts on the neighborhood, are just dramatically reduced. And the city recognizes that in their traffic standards, in their parking standards. The impact on a neighborhood of senior project is simply greatly reduced over what we call market rate projects. And that's why the applicant understood that this was an appropriate location for a senior housing. Joanne went into great detail about the residential screening of the landscaping, and I won't repeat that. I do want to speak to an issue, and that is the outreach of the community. The applicant held a number of on-site open houses. They posted signs on the property to come and meet. They met with the neighborhood. They even went door to door to seek the community's input. And please understand, that's never been the policy of the city of Corona, and it should never be the policy that we give residents some sort of veto power. But we want to understand what their issues are. We want to understand what their concerns are. And as I indicated in my letter to you, the applicant submitted in error a document that was really designed to recite information of who the property owners were, and we asked that that letter be deleted. Second of all, the Flores family has come to us and said they felt as if the husband didn't understand that there was a language problem. I assure you that we brought a Spanish speaker to meet with him, and we understood, the Spanish speaker of our group understood that he recognized that he was indicating his approval for the project. That doesn't matter to us anymore, because if the family wants to take a stand and say they indicate they don't support the project, then we're not going to stand behind that letter, and we're going to ask that it be withdrawn. And that's what we've done, and that's what your staff is doing. So I want to have the council clearly understand that if anybody comes forward and says that their position was misunderstood or they've changed their mind, we recognize that that's the appropriate thing to do, and we're doing that. Please recognize that senior housing in your general plan element is indicated as being a special needs group, that it really needs to have a recognition that it's important to provide for this type of housing in your project. And this is an area of town that would be appropriate and perhaps more affordable for seniors than other areas of our community. And so with those issues in mind, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but at the end of the day, this is not a situation in which we are changing the character of a community. We're in effect taking the next step in a transition, which has now been occurring now for decades. And what we want to do is we want to bring in a high-quality project that adequately references and understands the needs of the community and has various features that makes it as attractive and desirable as possible to both the community and the neighborhood as a whole. Are there any questions for me this evening? Mr. Haley.
Joanne listed the apartment ratio of how many one-bedroom and how many two-bedroom, and I didn't get that. Could you go?
I believe it's 52 one-bedroom and 12 two-bedroom. Joanne will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I have it.
Yes, she will.
52 one-bedroom and 12 two-bedroom, Joanne?
That's correct. Okay. The reason I ask you is that those of us who are seniors, sometimes we have students coming back after college, after the military, after divorces, and having kids move back in with us.
It's hard to get rid of them, isn't it, Dick?
Well, I did, but I got lucky. But with just a one-bedroom apartment, it doesn't seem that that's a feasible activity.
And the great majority of these are one-bedroom, and even the two-bedroom units, the total square footage area of these apartments are much smaller in size than market rate apartments would be to reflect the lower cost to the resident, the senior nature, and to reflect the fact that they're not designed for families. They're designed for a husband and wife at most, and in many cases, these will be individuals, frankly.
Okay, please.
There is also a condition of approval placed on this project that they do have to record an agreement with the city as well as a deed restriction that does restrict the age limit to 55 years and older. So this is not a situation where you can have someone younger than that living in the community. And that is typical of what we've done with other senior projects here in the city.
Okay, something else, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So we have 52 and 12 is 64 apartments. And parking places, we've got 97, correct?
98.
Pardon me?
98.
98, okay.
97 are required.
So there's room for parties and Super Bowl Sunday and things like that. The other thing I have is this, again, because I'm the senior guy here, are these going to be for active seniors as opposed to assisted living?
That's absolutely correct. We have a whole different land use and amenities calculation for assisted living. Assisted living, and we have a number of facilities in town which I call the continuum of care. They may be individual homes, and on the same property they have a higher level of care, and then they may have assisted living. We also have facilities in town that are total assisted living. The assisted living is not what this project is. So if somebody needs that type of help, they would go to some other facility. These are folks who are empty nesters. These are folks who don't desire the burdens of a large home and a yard and those types of things, that would be quite happy with the central courtyard of amenities. But this is not, it's a mid-range, frankly, between standard housing and assisted living. The amenities, the design features and so forth, they're designed for this age group, but these are not homebound people, generally speaking. It's for active seniors.
Okay, I'm asking you some questions because I've received a number of emails from very concerned citizens. And the big thing, of course, is the parking. And apparently we've got 50% parking bonus over and above what's, there's 64 apartments, 32, so it's 96, so it's 50% more. So it's a parking space and a half for each one.
Right.
And so, because there was some people saying there was going to be parking problems on Buena Vista.
Well, parking is already prohibited on the east side of Buena Vista, I believe. So that they're going to have limited parking problems if parking is prohibited on that one side.
That's it for now, but I'm going to leave my door open if I may. Thank you.
Mr. Fox, did you have a question?
Yes. So 98 spaces for 64 units. How would that increase if this was regular market rate? How many spaces would that take, and how many more cars would it be if it was market rate?
The way it works with market rate, we do it by bedroom count, where in this case, we do not do it by bedroom count for seniors. So on a 1-bedroom, it's 1.5, and on a 2-bedroom, it's 2 spaces. So there you have to already double it.
Okay, so it's a lot less because it's senior.
And then you also have to provide 1 space for every 5 units for guest on a
Right.
market rate. I'm sorry, non-age restricted.
Okay, so that would be, how many? Or is it hard to compare, I guess, because it's not the same? I'm just trying to grasp the idea that this is having fewer cars, fewer parking spaces because they're senior apartments.
Keep talking and I'll do the
And
calculation.
I will keep talking while you figure it out. That's essentially my only question. Trying to dovetail off what Dick was asking. In other words, it would be obviously much more crowded if it was market rate.
114 spaces.
Okay. Then you would have the scenario Councilman Haley was talking about, people coming and all that. Okay, I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
I don't know if you can put one of the exhibits back up that shows either the aerial or the neighborhood zoning map. It would appear that the lots were very long and have been truncated over time. Yeah, that one will work. So the property behind one of those houses I know was actually purchased just recently. Actually, I guess it's behind 2 of the houses. The other 2 houses that were going to be staying there, that it's kind of wrapping around, when did that part of those lots, which I would assume were actually a part of those 2 houses, when did that become part of this lot? Do you know?
I don't, Mr. Montanez. I don't know if Mr. Neary knows the answer to that, but I don't. I'm sorry.
But you see what I'm saying. It would appear that those lots went all the way back to the rear property line.
Yeah, and that could well be, but it wasn't done as part of this project. We didn't adjust those lot lines at all on those lots. Those were pre-existing in those properties in question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from me, council? Thank you for your
I
consideration.
just have a couple, just quick, then I've got some after the speakers. I'm blowing up this, trying to look at this, and I was looking through this files. How many elevators are there?
There are 2 elevators, I believe.
One on each end?
One on the south and north end, yes.
And then is there more than the normal handicap parking?
When it goes through the plan check process, we are required to check that, so it'll meet the requirement.
Okay. And there's a jacuzzi but no pool?
That is correct.
Okay. I have some other questions, but I'll wait till after